President Trump travels to West Virginia today to campaign for Republican Senate candidate Patrick Morrisey, the man seeking to take away Senator Joe Manchin's seat. It's just one of many contested races around the country as we get ready for the midterm elections this November. And to give us the current state of play, we welcome now our Politics Roundtable, Jen Kerns, Republican strategist and former spokeswoman for the California Republican Party, and Basil Smikle. He is a Republican strategist and former executive director to the New York State Democratic Party. So welcome, both of you. Jen, I'm going to start with you. I'm tempted to ask what the damages are for stealing a campaign slogan, but I'll avoid that for just a moment and ask you instead about, let's start with the West Virginia Senate race here, because Joe Manchin, former governor, very popular, but he's in sort of a tight race there. How do you handicap it?
I handicap this one as too close to call. My family's actually from West Virginia. My mom and dad were born and raised there. My grandfather was a coal miner in West Virginia, in fact. Brother was born there. I'm the only person in my family who wasn't born there. So I know the state pretty well. And look, I think what matters to these common sense voters, and there's really no other state outside of a couple that really have just such common sense voters. And I think the basics are important to them. I think jobs are important to them. I think the economy is important to them. And I think bringing back those coal mining jobs are also key to them. So, look, I know Joe Manchin's very popular, but so is President Trump right now. His approval rating very high and getting even higher with Democrats. So I think Joe Manchin ought to be a bit worried.
So, Basil, I'm from Michigan, not from West Virginia, but I had those auto jobs get lost. My father, my grandfather were with it. Is the president being honest with the people of West Virginia, saying we're going to bring those jobs back? Because when he came in, he's liberalized a lot of things. The jobs haven't come back yet.
Right. It's a great question. And that, I think, is the big concern here, because as much as we can talk about, he went to Carrier and tried to get those jobs back as well. The problem is that the president of the United States, in and of himself, that office alone cannot bring back an entire industry. Incredibly difficult to do, if not impossible to do. So the question is, not so much will he be able to bring those jobs back, but can he find opportunities for those that have lost their jobs through other things, either the shrinking of the field or through automation? We haven't seen the president be able to do that. So I think, not to quote Bill de Blasio here, but there are promises that are being kept that are not going to be able to be made. But he is still a very popular president, though I do think Joe Manchin wins.
So you're saying make West Virginia great again. Well, look, the president,
New York great again,
the
too.
president is already doing this. You see the growth of the U.S. set to be at least 3% through the back half of 2018, just in time for these 2018 midterms. You see the growth is going to be the biggest since 2005. That's combined with record stock markets, which a lot of people didn't give him credit for. A lot of analysts, I'm sure not on this network, but other networks said the stock markets were going to crash within 3 days of his inauguration. There was going to be a global contagion. Turned out not to be true. So I think he's got the wind at his back, so to speak.
Speaking of records, the S&P 500 very near right now, 2872 is the level. 2872.87 was that record set on January 26th. So we're very, very close to actually surpassing that. But Jen, I have to ask, if the president is doing so well and his approval ratings are so good, as you mentioned, then why aren't more Republican candidates talking about him? We have the Brookings Institution analyzing Republican candidates headed to the midterms. Of all non-incumbent Republicans running for the House, only like 53% don't talk about the president at all. Why?
Well, some of these folks are in swing districts where I think they're not sure yet of their footing. Look, this has been a very rough 18 months out of the gate for President Trump. But I think what you're seeing here, he's got this record approval rating, the highest in his own party outside of George W. Bush in the immediate wake of 9/11. You also have, he's got the greatest popularity of any president, regardless of party, Republican or Democrat, again, except for George W. Bush. At this point in John F. Kennedy's presidency, John F. Kennedy wasn't even this popular, which is really astonishing. You also look at Bill Clinton, who is very beloved by the financial community. He also surpasses, Trump also surpasses Bill Clinton at this point.
Kennedy, right? We'll just avoid that, sure.
Basil, the AP now saying, quoting two official sources, saying that President Trump will campaign heavily, that he will spend, about 40 days from Labor Day to the midterms on the campaign trail. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for Democrats?
I have no problem with it because the truth is, and owing to Jen's point earlier, the president is polarizing. Regardless of where his poll numbers are, and they'll go back and forth, they're still pretty low. And he is a polarizing figure. And I think what voters want, and I do believe there's maybe not a blue wave, but a blue ridge.
Trickle.
There's not a trickle, something in between the two. But I do think voters are looking for some balance. So even if there's, candidates from the progressive side of the party, even if they're candidates that may mirror more conservative interests, they are looking for the balance. So even as Donald Trump goes out and campaigns for his preferred candidates, voters, I think, still want some pushback against him. And that's something that I think Democrats will hang their hat on.
So, Jen, you're absolutely right. The numbers are good in the economy. There's no question about it. And it may well be that this really helps the Republicans in November. What about 2 years from November? Is it possible the president's peaking too early? Because at least the projections, and you're right, a lot of people got projections wrong. A lot of projections are, we're not going to stay up at this 3-4% growth rate. It's going to come back down. That's what everybody expects. Is it going to be okay in November of 2020?
I think it will be. And in fact, I'm going to go out on a limb here today, August 21st, and say there's going to be a Reagan-esque coalition of those never-Trumpers who didn't like Trump initially, but they're fiscal conservatives. They're coming home to roost. We see that in the poll numbers. Democrats, I think, also who care about tax reductions and jobs in the economy, I think are also going to come over to Trump's side, believe it or not. I think it's going to happen.
So, Bezel, I want to put it back on you just for this coming November. If jobs and the pocketbook is the most important issue, don't the Democrats have an awful tough time to say you're going to be better off with us than you are with them? Because it is going pretty well for most people in the country.
There is a sense that, it's going well for some people, but not the folks that Donald Trump necessarily wanted to get on board with him. Because there's this really great sense that certainly for working people, owing to the comment earlier about coal, but there are a lot of folks that have not seen their wages go up appreciably, that still feel a tremendous amount of anxiety and are concerned about the stability of this president. And so when you combine those things, I think there is a sense that Democrats can talk about our party as a party of social and economic justice.
If I may.
And I think that's important.
I think President Trump has surprised everyone. I think he has democratized prosperity. You look, he was only elected with 8% of the African-American vote. After a year, it was 18%. USA Today just reported
those numbers are still pretty bad.
This is great. We're going to come back and do this again. And there's no question he's surprised people. Democratized prosperity, we can debate. Okay, but that's a powerful point. Okay, Basil Smikle, Democratic strategist, and Jen Kerns, Republican strategist. Thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks.
Right, and still ahead, we'll be watching the S&P 500.